Hi, my name's Cal. I'm a solutions engineer at Stytch, and I'll be walking you through how to make your first Stytch API calls using Postman. Postman's an awesome developer tool for exploring and experimenting with APIs, and Stytch provides a pre-built workspace to make it even easier to get going with the Stytch API. A couple of prerequisites before we get started. If you don't have a Stytch project yet, head over to stytch.com and set one up. And when you create a project, you'll get access to the Stytch API keys, which we'll need later on. And then second, some familiarity with Postman will help. I'm not going to get into all the details of how to use this tool. So if you want to get the full value out of it, I'd recommend exploring the tool further after. So let's jump into the docs and get started. You can follow this URL yourself. I already have it pulled up. And at this URL in our docs, we link out to the Stytch Postman collection, which I'm going to follow, and now we're in Postman. One thing to note, if you are not already logged into Postman, I am, you'll need to create an account or log in order to get this all working correctly. So once we're in the Stytch public workspace, we have a few things. When you open up the link, you'll land on a README. There's some more details here about how to use this workspace. And then on the left-hand side, there's two interesting tabs. The first being Collections, which is an organized list of all the Stytch API endpoints, as well as Environments, which are the place where we sort of set up our various API keys. So we need to do this first before we proceed with calling any of the APIs. So I already have some values in here from an earlier test, but yours will very likely look like this. And so let's set this up for the first time. I'm going to head over into my Stytch dashboard to my API keys, and I'm going to grab my project ID. I can just click on this and it'll automatically copy over to my clipboard. I'm going to head back over to Postman and I'm going to paste my project ID here. I'm going to do the same thing for my secret, copy it to my clipboard, paste it in here. And then finally, I'm going to do my public token, which we won't use for this example, but it is nice to have set up in Postman. So once we have these three values, I'm going to press save. And then I'm also going to select my environment. In this case, I set up the test environment. And this just tells Postman which environment to actually pull these values from. Finally, I'm going to call a very simple read endpoint, which is our user's search endpoint. I just want to make sure that, the environment was set up correctly. And if it is, we should get a 200 back. And so I'm going to press send. And we get success. This is a brand new project, so searching users returned no users because I haven't created any yet. But now we are good to go. So let's test out an actual authentication method. And for this example, I'm going to do one-time passcodes via email. And we can, on the left-hand side, scroll down to this here. One-time passcodes via email, and then I'm going to select login or create user. So the way this authentication method works is a user would land on your site and you would prompt them for an email address. They would type it in. And then what will happen is this endpoint would be called and an email would be sent to that user with a 6-digit code. And then you would ask the user to type that code back into your site, thus proving that they got that email and own that email address. So let's try this out. I'm going to do cal@stytch.com, which is my work email. We're going to press send. And it looks like a user was created. The request was successful. So in a separate tab over here, I'm going to pull up my email. And it looks like I did get one. And my code is 246593. I'm going to copy that to my clipboard. And now we can finish this authentication attempt by going down to the Authenticate endpoint, which is right below. And we need two things here for this to be successful. We're in the body, and we need the code, which I just got out of my email, 246593. And then we also need the method ID, which in this case is the email ID, which we just sent this code to. We can pull this out of the response from that very first API call. I'm going to copy it here. And I am going to paste it in. And then I'm actually going to add one other thing, which is we're going to start a Stytch session as well. So I'm going to pass a session duration minutes. And let's say the session lasts 60 minutes. I'm going to press send. And success. We have now logged cal@stytch.com in via email OTPs. So we can see that a few things here. We have a user object, and we have a session object, and we also have session tokens and JWTs. The last thing I want to show off then is taking our session and authenticating the session. So once someone is logged in and doing, various authenticated things on your site that require authorization, it's very useful to then use Stytch sessions to protect any sort of endpoints that you have, which allow for your users to do protected actions. So I'm going to grab the session token, and then back on the left-hand side, I'm going to go to session management, and I'm going to select the authenticate session endpoint. I'm going to head over into the body, and I'm going to, in this case, I grabbed the session token. I'm going to paste it in here. I'm going to delete this other stuff for now. We don't need it. And I'm going to press send again, and we just authenticated this session. It's still valid, and it'll remain valid until the session expires or until that user revokes their session by logging out. So that's a quick rundown of logging someone in with an email OTP and then authenticating their session. I will say that afterwards, if you want to explore the Stytch API more, take a look through this left-hand side, try out a lot of the endpoints. We have all of our different authentication methods here. And then also be sure to head over to the Stytch docs. So Postman only lists some of the parameters that each of our API endpoints takes. A lot of the optional parameters don't show up in Postman. So if you want to get a full understanding of how our APIs work and what they're capable of, spend some time in our docs as well as Postman and try out different combinations. And yeah, that's this full tutorial. We hope that you're successful, and we're excited to see what you build. Thanks.